Okay, number 37, using screws for framing. Now, this was a very hot topic a little bit ago here, and there was people on both sides of it again. And it started because there was a conversation about using screws for decking, and some guy made a comment and said, like, I care so much about my jobs, I even use screws for the framing. And another guy was like, you're a hack. And then he actually took a screenshot of that, made a new post, and was like, guys like this are a shame to the industry. Like, he really went after him.
Wow.
About using screws for framing. And so then I think, to his surprise, a lot of people came in and disagreed and were like, we also use screws for framing.
We're hacks too.
I guess we're all hacks.
We're all hacks.
And I commented too, and was like, I've framed many decks with just screws. I've done them both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Call me a hack. I'm good.
Yeah, but you owned a fancy track saw.
I'm okay with that.
And a planer.
Yeah.
So you're not a hack.
Right.
I mean, you never did
Right?
a miter, a waterfall corner.
Yeah.
So.
I only made sure the stuff on top looked good, though. My screws were snapping off left, right, and center underneath.
Yeah.
So, yes, you should frame with nails. That's like, nobody's going to tell you that nails are not the right fastener for the job when it comes to framing. The argument is whether screws are also okay. And I think that, and when we're talking these screws, we're talking like just traditional kind of ceramic coated number 8, number 10 screws or something, right?
As long as they're a coated screw.
Yeah.
If you're using a construction screw in treated lumber, then you are a hack.
Yeah, you got to use the right screw for exterior use and treated lumber,
Right.
for sure. But the argument here that they were trying to make is like the age-old argument that anybody who's ever heard this term before likes to bring up and use all the time, is if they're some sort of fastener and steel expert, is that they don't have the proper shear strength, which is true. They have less shear strength than a nail.
I've said that, but
how many...
To be totally honest, I have absolutely no idea what the shear strength of a screw is or the shear strength of a nail. I have no idea.
Right.
But I tell people that a nail has more shear strength.
And when it comes to shear applications, then that's a good argument.
Yep.
If it's like joist hangers,
yeah,
that's it's in shear, you need to have shear capacity on that thing, then yeah, you got to use a proper fastener there. My argument to that was, name all the spots when you're framing your deck where the fastener is in a shear capacity. Like, where is it? Where's the shear? Your midspan blocking?
No.
No. Your rim joist?
Nope.
Maybe, I guess, but not really. You're telling me if you throw in 5 screws into the end of that 2x10, then it's gonna, at some point, that rim board's gonna shear off? Unlikely.
Unlikely.
And where else are you using the screws? Your joists into your beam? Is that really in shear?
No.
You're laminating a beam together. Is that in shear? No, I don't really think so.
Yeah, if you pick it up properly with your post
If it's
underneath.
supported underneath of the post,
Yep.
then where is it shearing to?
Yep.
So where are the fasteners in shear? And so the argument there,
The hangers.
One guy tried exactly, and so you need to use a proper fastener. You need to use a hanger nail or structural screw for that, strong dive screw for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my argument. Is that, and I said I've used those interchangeably when framing, and I liked screws more because they pulled things tighter.
Yes.
So I like that.
Yep.
And I've never, ever had a call back for framing shearing or coming loose because the screws are snapping. It just doesn't happen. So the argument this one guy made said that, well, lateral shifting of the deck could snap the screw. And it's like, yeah, you're right. A screw would snap if the deck was racking a bunch before a nail would.
Yes.
Why is your deck racking all over the place?
You had a big dance party.
You didn't build it right in the first place. It wasn't the fastener's fault. You should have braced that thing up a bit better.
Maybe.
Stabilize it or something. So that's my argument. And the other part of that is that, like, you're not just going to put number 8 screws into everything. Like, when I was building, I had plenty of GRKs run through these things too. Like, the beams are always, like, maybe screwed them together, but then I went back and drove them full of GRKs. So there's additional things to that. But on an average deck, like, we sell decking to homeowners that generally don't have framing nailers.
Mm-hmm.
We sell them screws all the time. We've never ever, like, we've probably got our handprint on 5,000 decks over the last few years, and nobody's come back and be like, the screws are snapping
Only
in my framing.
Yeah.
In
only
PVC
on the
decking, maybe,
only on the
right?
PVC decking. Yeah.
So it's just for the most part a non-issue. Now that said, if you're in an earthquake zone where doesn't matter how you build that thing, it might get some shake to it, then yeah, maybe you should follow the code of using the nails in those things.
Yep.
But for the most part, I think screws are just fine. That's my argument. So
Well, lots of people talking about this one.
okay, yeah, we got some action here with this. Let's scroll back here and see where we're at. Mitcon Deck says, I think you need both screws and nails for best results. And so that often, more times than not, was how we rolled with things. We'd have the framing nailers out for the stuff we wanted to slap something together quick. For me, it was a speed thing. It was like nailing the beam together. Yeah,
I
dude,
like
that was a
spiking
nailer,
the beam together.
right?
Yeah.
Because you can do that fast. Screws take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I think the finished results both work. But if you ever look at a beam screwed together versus a beam just nailed together, when they start to dry, the screws hold it tighter.
Yep.
So anyway, Eric Teru says it's not uncommon to see deck screws in hangars. That is absolutely in his market. I think in every market.
That's every market.
That's the first sign of a guy who didn't know what he was doing.
Yep. He didn't have a track saw, that guy.
Didn't have a track saw, no.
Or a planer.
And Eric also says, we also see deck screws are rusted out on framing. So I've seen that on both, right? On nails and screws. It's just a coating. Both of them just have a coating. It's a galvanized coating or it's a ceramic coating on the screw.
Correct.
And if that wears off, which quite often it does when it's being driven in,
yes,
especially on nails, what can happen when the striker hits the head of the nail, it can sometimes chip the coating and then you see rust. Might be okay inside the lumber, but you see rust on the outside or something.
Yes. Yeah.
And the screws, sometimes if you ever back a screw out, if it, depending on the quality of screw and how dense lumber was, sometimes you'll see that the ceramic coating did strip as the screw was driving in. So like in both scenarios, you can have some degradation of the fastener over time because it's just a coating. And if it wears off, it will not fail, but it'll rust or whatever.
Yeah, just like Where's that?
Your wife wants to know how you're feeling.
Great.
She's in the Instagram today.
She knows exactly how I'm feeling.
She wanted to make sure you actually made it here probably. Precision Construction is a big comment. I haven't pre-read it here. Simpson says that their number 9 screw has more load capacity than 10D nail, and number 10 SD had more load capacity than a 16. Plus, the SD screws have been designed for bend like a nail rather than shear. Yeah. So for sure, and so one of the Simpson guys actually came in and cleared this all up for everybody and said like, the way these screws are made, and I don't remember the process, whatever, like the screws that are meant for shear applications are made differently than a traditional, like heated and cooled, like carbon steel screw.
Hardened screw.
Hardened screw, right? And so so his point was, listen, this isn't like, these aren't catch-all phrases. A nail doesn't always have better shear strength than a screw just because it's a nail.
Yes.
And a screw doesn't always have weaker just because it's a screw.
Yep.
It depends on how they're made.
Okay.
So Eric says, galvanized nails are hard to find here. Thankfully, I have a local supplier in Regina.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We'll ship you pallets of pass load galvanized ring shank nails.
He's on me about getting a pallet to him right now, actually.
Well, get on it.
I was
one thing to do after this.
Yep.
And then 100 more things after that. Yep. And last one is
like sleep.
Premium yard and garages. Says, try ring shank glue-coated nails for those beams. They will hold them super tight. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for sure. I think that's the default thing. Use ring shank.
Yes.
Don't use smooth nails. I assume when we're talking nails that everybody's using ring shank. Maybe I'm wrong.
Here's the thing. The ring shank are really hard to pull out of your hand, though. The
Yeah.
smooth ones, they just like, in they go, and then out they come.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Both nails I've put in my hand have been smooth ones, and they come out super easy.
Right. How about the screws that you've put in your hand? Have you pulled those straight out?
I haven't gone far enough in. So it's just like I nick the edge usually.
Perfect. Eric wants his pallet stuff first. First thing you do, his pallet.